This is Chickenball. Come at us, bro.
Welcome back to the Chickenball Pod. I'm your host this week, Andrew. We've got a small crew. We got Scott Bird coming in from Seattle. Scott, fresh off the 7-2 demolition of Maccabee. How you feeling?
Feeling great, man. It was more than the result for me. I think the performance, built off of Chelsea is just screams momentum right now. So very happy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we didn't pod or record right after the Chelsea game or the Newcastle game, but even just maybe back up even slightly, not to take too much time. But I mean, after that Newcastle game, you and I were texting, and I was a minute away from saying that is the most enjoyable Spurs game that I have watched in a long time. And then of course it all got derailed by the horrible penalty call, which is obviously a theme now, not just with Spurs but with so many other teams. So. Against Chelsea, who fielded a pretty strong team, and Spurs fielded a more or less strong-ish team as well. And to obviously get that 2-1 win was big. But, obviously we're a couple of days removed from that now. So just kind of highlighting maybe some of the individual performances. We chatted offline. Eric Lamela, he's the kind of guy that is to be super frustrating to watch. When the creativity has to come through him, it doesn't really happen. He's certainly a light version of, say, Lo Celso. But, you certainly can't ask anything more of the guy. The issues that we're seeing with Dele Alli and attitude, we've never seen that from Lamela. He's one of those guys who seems at this point, how do you sell a guy like that?
Yeah, spot on, man. I think I'll start by saying just quickly on that penalty call against Newcastle, it was a disaster. It was the hardest part to stomach there was that was such a good, well-rounded performance from us. We went out, we got our goal, we defended like champions, and we were robbed of 2 points. We move on, right? So to Chelsea, though, to what you're asking about, it was crucial that we came out and reacted positively to what happened against Newcastle. I think the old Spurs would have rolled over, would have allowed the season to almost start spiraling or derailing at that point. A loss to Chelsea or a loss in the PKs or whatever it is. So I'll start by saying that result against Chelsea tells us how far we've come mentally as a club, in my opinion, in a short time. But to Lamela, you're spot on, man. The thing about Lamela for me, Jose manages much more between the ears than on the field, in my opinion. And I think we're starting to see that more and more. And I think people that are very talented at managing other human beings understand that, and they're very good at it, right? And I think Lamela offers everything Jose asked for between the ears. And so, regardless of the individual errors, the misplaced passage, which I will say, misplaced passes from that position are going to happen. I think you have to have somebody who's willing to make mistakes over and over again and shut down, misplaced pass, but still keep going and chipping away, right? And he does that. But I just think he is the type of person who's going to come out. He's going to give the mental approach that Jose is asking for, and he's going to continue to get himself in the position to at least attempt to pick passes and pick locks. And I think, for a midfield that would be a little bit deeper in the field, like if we see a PEH or a Winks, turning the ball over like Lamela does, it's much more problematic. But again, you have to have that person who's willing to just continuously keep pressing when things aren't clicking, and I think Lamela has the fortitude to do that. I also think my favorite thing about the Chelsea match was after the game, his interview. He talked about the win. He steered away from individual performances, and then he finished the interview saying I'm going to go celebrate with my teammates in the dressing room now. That's just the type of guy he is. He's not looking for individual clout. He wants Spurs to be successful. I think it's pretty obvious he's actually a Spurs fan, as a lot of Argentines in his age group are. But just, again, the mental approach that he brings to the game is everything that Jose asked for, and it showed against Chelsea big time. I also think, we're seeing more examples of Hugo's leadership shining under Jose's leadership, if that makes any sense. And I think that has a huge impact on us winning that penalty shootout as well. Hugo didn't necessarily make any saves, right? The goal they missed was Mason Mount essentially just missing the net. But I think the fact that Hugo continued to lead the team through them scoring their penalties and just keep, I guess, instilling the idea that we're in this, I think that allows guys to step up to the spot and bury their penalties too, which kind of sounds strange, but I think is worth pointing out. So for me, Hugo was phenomenal in that game. Lamela obviously really stood out. There's a couple other guys that are probably worth a shout. Like Dyer was man of the match, right? And I think he completed 2 90-minute matches in the span of 72 hours or whatever, and got some, high praise individually from Jose for that. So he's definitely up there, but I think overall it was just a phenomenal team performance in the face of some adversity when it was really needed. So.
Well, I think the thing with Lamela, and you don't hear this term used as much in the UK or kind of in soccer in general. You hear it a lot in hockey and you hear it in basketball, but having role players, right?
Yep.
Guys who, are not going to be MVP type players. Like, they can be man of the match type players, but they're not going to be season long MVP type players. They're not going to put up elite numbers, or they're not going to start every match. They're going to be in kind of patches of the season. And I think, a guy like that has really embraced it. Like, clearly you want to be on the field, but like, have we ever heard of him complaining about his role or anything like that? And again, like, I'm obviously harsh on a guy like Harry Winks, but like, I get why managers like him, right? Like, I'm not under any illusion as to why he's well liked. He doesn't complain. He works hard. He works tirelessly like Lamela, and having those players. And I think now and again, just to your point about, Mourinho's man management, is, he takes players aside and explains that. And like, he doesn't belittle their role. Maybe they're not all going to be Harry Kane. They're not all going to be Lo Celso or Hugo or the big names, but these guys have a huge role to play. And especially with the amount of matches that Spurs have to play. And you saw that with Lamela stepping up. And I mean, again, like, he's not a prolific goal scorer, but like, one thing about him that's nice to see is like, maybe he is stepping into that role of being a big game player a little bit more, because, we saw with Lucas Moura obviously scoring some huge goals the previous season. Lamela had goals, but he never really had the big ones. That was a huge goal, right? Like, yes, it's the Carabao Cup. Yes, it was, a quarterfinal match, but losing that match had all the makings of an early season collapse. You get robbed against Newcastle. You lose a game you expected to lose anyways, but like, you lose it poorly after playing poorly in the first half. But guys like Lamela, just like I said in that first Paul we did a while ago, like, don't go gently into that night. And that's exactly what guys like Lamela do.
100%, man. And it's been a long time since we had good squad players who most importantly were comfortable in that role. Like, I remember from the documentary, Lamela, he's just coming off an injury, picks up another knock, and the physio would ask him, like, are you going to play? We don't think you should. And he said, well, my body shouldn't play, but I will definitely play if the team needs me, because that's that's what I'm here for, Yeah. He's like, I will sacrifice my body to make sure the team has what it needs. And that's what he does. And that's why there's talk about Lamela's surplus. We should sell Lamela. We will not sell Lamela, and that's because Jose identifies him as someone who understands the mental approach to the game that Jose needs right now. And I would equate Sissoko in the same category. I think he's another guy that's going to be a squad player, is going to see his minutes reduced, and he's not going to have a problem with that, and those guys are very important right now.
Yeah, they are. Well, and again, it's up to the coaches to use them, right? Like, again, like, you compare to other sports, like, like we're watching right now in the NFL, Josh Allen having a career year, because the coaching staff, they have a new staff, and they're playing to his strengths, right? And they're minimizing the weaknesses. And I think that's what Mourinho is going to do as well. So, like, how do you manage Lamela so that he's not hurt every 3 matches?
Exactly.
Most out of that guy. Like, do you bring him on chasing a goal because he will press from the front? Like, he does offer another level of creativity. But, one guy we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about as well in that match was, the first starting match for Sergio Reguilon, just lightning down the left side. And, a little anxious kind of at first, right? Like, he came sliding in on Azpilicueta, missed it. And again, there was comical defending beyond that. But like, it is really exciting to watch that guy. Like, he is lightning. And I mean, again, no offense to Ben Davies, who we'll talk about today, but like, it sure seems like an upgrade. And if nothing else, it is a very different, version we have on that left side.
Yeah. I mean, I think Sergio is going to offer us a similar product to what Rose did in the peak Rose years. And I think Rose and Davies were really good, or really complementary to one another in those years too. And, just as Trippier and Walker were. So it's nice to see that again. Sergio's the fastest player I've seen in a long time. Like, my God, his pace is incredible. I also think the biggest thing about him from that game is he definitely was at fault for the goal that they scored, for Werner's goal, in some regard. And like you said, he made a few mistakes defensively. 22 years old, you come in on your debut at a massive club, you immediately are involved in the concession of a goal, right? It's very easy to, at that point, like, anxiety heightens, the heartbeat starts racing, you're sweating a little bit, you're thinking like, oh my God, like, is this going to be a disaster of a debut? But that kid settled himself, stayed very composed, bagged a crucial assist to send us into penalties. And at 22 years old, I think that also screams mentality, which is what we've been missing for a long time. So.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, it was a lot to celebrate, for sure. I mean, again, being, a match that we thought we were going to punt on, and we kind of did, to be fair, but like obviously the result turned out better, and that obviously is, a strong team mentality. So, 8 hours later, playing finally at home against Maccabi Haifa of the Israeli League. I didn't catch much of this match just based on the time of day and the difficulty finding a stream to watch it. But, the scoreline looked pretty good, 7-2, putting Spurs through obviously to the group stage there and finally getting done those early season matches that completely congested the fixtures. But, what stood out for you today? Like were there any key players, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think a fair few things I would point out. I think I thought Davies looked really good actually today. He played a couple of really good balls today actually, and ended up with 2 assists. I think Deli showed that he's getting some confidence back. I think Deli's got a border. He's got a border on arrogance with his confidence, right? In order to be effective, like we need that person who's willing to just like try something that's a little bit nuts and out of nowhere. And the penalty he won, it was a pretty slick nutmeg, and then he buried his penalty. I think that little things like that can build confidence back, which is going to be important. And it looks like Jose's working on that with him. I think that Bergwijn looked a lot better than he looked against Chelsea. He was confident with the ball on his feet. Now, he definitely made some errors. Could have composed himself a little bit when he missed an opportunity to score when he tried to trip the keeper. But the flicks and tricks and just the composure and patience on the ball that I saw from him today is a little more aligned with what we would expect from him. And then I think, just seeing us rotate in the midfield was pretty special too. And seeing that we didn't really lose any girth in the midfield when we rotated. And of course, Chelsea and this Maccabi Haifa team are, different in terms of quality, but it was nice to see the midfield stay composed as well. Toby looked pretty good. Couple errors from Dobinson. I'm trying to stay positive here, but we certainly saw some suspect defending from him, which is kind of becoming a theme. So that's something I want to keep my eye on, and I'll leave it up to Jose to continue to build his confidence back up. But overall, I think just a really good performance from the team in general. Never let conceding get us down. Both times we conceded, we immediately scored within like minutes of conceding those goals. So I think the biggest takeaway for me from today is we went into a match that had a lot of pressure on it, because if we didn't win today, our season was derailed, like no doubt about that, right? We went in, conceded a couple goals, never faltered, and we've now built on a very positive result against Chelsea, a huge result today, not only the result itself and what it allows us to do going forward, but the scoreline as well going into United. And I think Sunday against United, if we get a result this week, will be looked back upon as a very, very important week in our season.
Yeah, I on a few good because like certainly, having watched the highlights and following what was happening online, with that awful pass that Davinson hit that led to the goal. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who, he came in, he had a great first season, playing between arguably the 2 best central defenders in the league or upwards in Europe that year. And as they started to decline, he started to get a bit more exposed. Yeah, I don't really know what to do with a guy like that. Like, I don't see them just selling him. I haven't heard any kind of rumors about him. To me, he lacks certain qualities that I would expect a player of his age, to have. And so, like, I look at a guy like Jefferson Tanganga, who was not great on the game against Chelsea, and he was coming back from injury, fitness. He didn't look sharp, right? And to me, there's a difference between making mistakes that had a lack of experience and not being sharp, and just sort of lacking some general skills. And I don't expect Davinson Sanchez to be able to dribble the length of the field, but he seems to struggle just with basic ball skills. And I'm always nervous every time he's on the field. And I know his athleticism covers for a lot, but some of the goals that we see us allowing, like, it's certainly not just on him, but I think there are things that a better central defender would just cut out that he's not cutting out. They don't look flashy, but it's stepping in front of the player before the pass arrives, or it's jockeying him off the ball or to the other side, on his off foot. And so I don't see that from Davinson. And so, we're obviously linked to Skriniar and a couple of other central defenders. And I think for this team to really push forward, I think Sanchez needs to be a squad player. Like, I'm not seeing it at this point that he's going to be a starting 11 player. Basically, I'm not seeing him being the player that we paid for.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. I might say it a little bit differently. I think what I would say is that we need someone to come in and make it clear to him that his position isn't safe. I think his first 2 seasons, he was really good. And I think those 2 seasons, he was put in prematurely because of some significant injuries to both Toby and Jan, right? And I think at the time, he still had the pressure knowing that these guys would be back, and he actually rose to it really well and said, like, look, I have an opportunity way earlier than expected to prove myself. I'm 21 years old, or maybe even 20 at the time. Played really, really well in those 2 seasons. And then maybe got a little complacent after that because he had played so well. And I think after those first 2 seasons, we all said, okay, this guy's like the staple of our back line for the next decade, right? And maybe complacency sets in. And so I think, so where I say I agree with you maybe a little bit differently is I do think he needs to be a squad player, but I think that's with a view to him earning his place back as like a staple in our back line. Because I still think he's very talented. He's got rapid pace. He's very strong. All his issues are up here right now. And for all those not watching YouTube, I'm pointing to my dome when I say that, but everything's between the ears right now with him. And I think bringing in somebody like a Skriniar will make it evident and obvious to him that he's got to pick it up if he wants to continue to get minutes.
Yeah, your point about like it's upstairs, because one thing I've said about him for a couple of years, like he needs to get a lot meaner, right? Like he's far too hesitant, and like you said, that's purely down to confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't take a lot of fouls. He doesn't, create a lot of penalties for the opposing teams, but like, he's just not mean. For a kid that big and fast, he should be doing better, right? Like in those one-on-one battles, like he doesn't even have the ball. Like he doesn't need to have good ball skills when he doesn't have it, but like he should be winning those one-on-one balls and not pushed off a lot of the times by some guys. That's timing, it's confidence. So yeah, I don't see him going anywhere, but you're right. Like maybe, and again, like a guy like I wanted to pivot to Ben Davies, 2 assists today. We talked about it earlier with Aurier. Aurier's looked good since, Dorian come in, like magic, what, some competition does. Like there's that, again, guys like Ben Davies are quiet. They're not going to get up in your face, but they need pressure. Like guys need pressure. And it's like you said before, like when Danny Rose was at his peak and Davies was coming in, like he still had to play hard, right? Like, or he wasn't going to play at all. And then, when Danny Rose his form went completely out the window. Then there was no pressure on Davies. And finally now we have a very different type of left back, but a guy who he's going to be pushing to play in the big games. And, guys like Ben Davies will be forced to play in, some of the Europa games, some of the cup games, or some of the, the lesser competition games. But he played well today. Like he was probably the best out of the 4 defenders today for Spurs. And he laid on 2 assists. Like you can't ask for much more than that from a left back.
Spot on, man. You couldn't be more correct. And I think, Poch said it best. Poch would always say, I'm signing you to train. And if you play in matches, that's icing on top of the cake. But you're being paid to come to training every day and train, right? And he's correct. But what happens is without that competition, it's not that Davies or whoever we're talking about as far as competition goes would show up to training and say, I don't have to work hard. Of course they have to work hard. And I guarantee you they work their ass off every day, but hard work and competition are very distinctly different things, right? And so, I think if you don't have competition in training, you can work your ass off and be the hardest working person on the pitch, but if you don't have that mental approach to competing, it's almost impossible to push yourself,
Yeah.
It really is, because I think you'll trick yourself into saying I'm competing, but I'm working hard because I don't have to compete, and then you just feel good about yourself because you're working hard, but that's only half the battle. So couldn't be more correct that what we're seeing is just straight up competition at these positions. Serge, Davies, everybody. I think even I got some heat for this on Twitter, but even Sonny, like, it's never that Son's position is ever in jeopardy from Bale, but like just knowing that there's more guys in that position, knowing that there's a world-class player who is now brought in and like the entire world's just like raving about this signing, like that does make you realize mentally, even subconsciously, I better prove how fucking good I am, and that's, again, just what we're seeing now. So.
Well, and it makes sense, right? Like it makes sense why, the best teams in any sport keep getting better, because like you're literally competing every day with the other best guy in the world, right?
Yep.
Like it's not
exactly.
just you're playing, but like because you only play 1 or 2 games. Well, us, we play 3 or 4 games a week, but typically you only play 1 or 2 games a week, whereas you're training 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And there's no competition there. You're not going to get any better. There's not going to be that kind of pressure, to do that. And Son is an interesting one, obviously out right now with what is hopefully not a major hamstring injury. Doubt he'll play against United, but presumably he'll be back after the international break, which is positive. But I think you're right. Like, nobody's going to say that there's, a better left winger on the team than Son. But like Son has a bit of an ego, right? Like he has the rock star status. Like he's used to being followed, obviously, especially in Korea, but elsewhere as well. And so having that inherent competition, like what's to say one game that Mourinho doesn't want to play Bale and Kane up top, right? And we don't have a left winger. So I think exactly right. Like we're finally seeing that now, that increase in competition for places, and it's obviously going to have a beneficial effect. But one guy that I tweeted about yesterday though was Dele Alli, and so I had said players like Lamela, like Lo Celso, like Kane, Loris, those are all Mourinho type players. They're big names, they're talented, and they play with an edge. And Dele Alli fits that as well. But like one of these things is not like the other. And that one thing is Dele, while the rest of them have thrived, Dele Alli has continued to struggle. He's been left out. So he did get some time today, finally, in the second half there. And he did draw the penalty with a nice flair move, like you said. And hard to see him being sold at this point, even on loan. Because, again, like, the ceiling is there. But just curious what your thoughts are on Alli, at this point, under Mourinho.
Yeah, I think Mourinho's everything he needed. I think if Mourinho didn't come in, Dele might have just kind of fizzled out and into the abyss. And he's got to have someone that sits him down and says, as we saw in the documentary, you're not good enough. You don't work hard enough. Got a lot of work to do if you want to be in my good graces. And I don't think Poch had it in him to do that. So again, not to make this a Poch conversation, but I think Dele needed Mourinho big time, and it's still a ways off in my opinion. But I was talking about this earlier today in a chat I'm in, and I look at Dele, and I look at some of the mistakes he's made off the field. A sex tape, let's just come out and say it, right? And then that blatantly racist video he made in response to coronavirus, and I look at the other superstars on the team. Like at one point, Dele, Kane, Son were all equally superstars, if you want to say, right?
Yeah.
And they have gone down very different trajectories since that time, And I look at some of the things Dele's done off the field. Kane would never even remotely come close to making those decisions, And so I think what I'm getting at here is his decline immediately correlated with blowing up. He was on the FIFA 19 cover board or whatever. He was in the game mode with Alex Hunter. He was being linked to Real Madrid for $150 million purchases. And then at the same time he declined, which tells me his head blew up. He all of a sudden thought that he didn't have to continue to prove himself. People can say I'm speculating, but that's obvious, right? It has to have happened that way.
That's what I thought for sure. That's again, like you said, because again, young player came in. How old was he when he started for Spurs? He was 18, I think.
Yeah.
He had success almost instantly. I remember that diving hitter he scored against Leicester, right? And then he just went like this.
Yep.
You've heard people saying, and former players, players who hit it big when they're young, often that's the peak because they didn't work hard to get there. But all of a sudden, everyone's telling them how great they are. Their agents, their sponsors, and all of a sudden, guys are passing them.
Totally, man. Well, I would have thought the same thing when I was 21 years old if I was doing what he was doing. The 21-year-olds are stupid. They're real dumb. And I've been one of them, So you're spot on. He had too many people in his head telling him how good he was. And that's when Jose came in and said, you better get it together. And then I love what Jose said when he said, you're going to have massive regrets in your life if you don't turn around right now, like you're going to look back and you're going to have regrets. And that's what Dele needed to hear. Now, again, I think of course it's a documentary, so we take everything with a grain of salt, but his body language wasn't good in that interview. And which tells me that it took a while to get to even where we are now, where it's kind of starting to click. But the fact that we haven't really entertained him leaving, I think, of course there's rumors floating around, but makes me believe that Jose sees a ton of value in the kid. And I think best thing we can do is just continue to, give him limited minutes and expect that he shows us what he's capable of when he gets those limited minutes, because I think he's got to know this. The alternative for him is to go play for a team that finishes between 8th and 5th place in the Premier League, right? He's not going to get a big move, maybe to a PSG or something, but he's certainly not going to go there and play. I remember when they were saying he was going to go on loan to Real Madrid, I was like, for what?
To do
what? Not usurping anybody in that lineup, So.
No, that's a great point. And I mean, and again, what I liked about the documentary that I really appreciated, and, especially because we got to watch, the players reacting to COVID. But you watch them talking about it amongst themselves innocently. The thing is, like you said, they genuinely are. Most of them are very young guys, right? And it didn't seem like Dele had that much maturity, right? Again, he's a young guy. You have to, temper your expectations. But, a criticism previously, with, when Poach was still there, and, especially when the team was starting to sink, is it didn't feel like there were any leaders, right? And again, we don't know, we're not there. We got to see finally Kane and Loris, but who's holding guys accountable? You saw Loris screaming at Son at the end of last season when he didn't track back. But who's doing that with Dele, right? You need leaders on that team, and whose job it is? It's the captain's job. But if he's not putting all in, the players should be calling him out as well, right? So, all we can hope, and he got on the scoreboard today with a penalty that he earned, with that nice move. So it'll be really interesting to see if he has a role on Sunday against Manchester United. Because, you look at what Mourinho's tried. He came in, he flattered him, telling him how good he was. That didn't work. He then told him he was lazy, he needed to work harder. That didn't really work either. And then now finally he's leaving him out of match day squads, right? And think about that, right? It was a bonding moment against Chelsea on Monday and he wasn't there, right?
Uh-huh.
How are you feeling? Either that motivates you to get your ass in gear or you're finished, right? Which is it?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a question right now. I think you make a good point too, that when Jose first came in and he did he wrapped his arm around Dele, and that's the first approach I think any good people manager is going to go with, And then what happened was Dele played phenomenally for the next 5 games, and then which tells me another example of the fact that blowing his head up is not going to be the route forward, period. It might work for a few games, and then again he's going to get complacent and then dive again. So clear what needs to happen. It's clear that it's happening under Mourinho. Sunday will continue to help us paint a picture. I don't think it paints the entire picture by any means, but I think what happens on Sunday will tell us that there's progression. That's an interesting one too, and I think we can get into that. But before, I think on the match today too, one thing I didn't mention that I think would be criminal to not mention is just how important the 2 goals from Gio and the hat trick for Kane were too. The Kane hat trick is whatever. I think we can all expect those types of things to happen. I think it's very, very important for him to continue to bag the goals. But for Gio, I think, there's speculation as to why he came off at halftime. And I highly assume it's because he's coming off an injury and they're just trying to manage his minutes as best they can. We're up 4-1, take the dude off, right? But those 2 goals have to be huge for his confidence, because we're going to need him to offer as much going forward as we do in the midfield, and it might be a breakthrough moment for him to have bagged a couple goals today.
Yeah, I like that. I think for sure, he's critical to the team's success. We've said before, Lo Celso, obviously Kane, we know that, but Lo Celso and Ndombele, who didn't play after playing 90 or close to it against Chelsea. And then obviously a heavy role against Newcastle on Sunday. It's not surprising. He was on the bench, so he was there if needed, but he wasn't, and that's great. We didn't want to, because he should have a role on Sunday. Lo Celso, I haven't heard any reports about an injury, but same thing. They took off Ndombele when he first came back after 45 minutes. Those guys, they were kind of giving half a game and half a game to each of them to build fitness, minimize injuries. But I agree. And One thing I wanted to say about Kane, I mean, I don't need to tell anybody that he's good, but last season for sure, before the COVID break, I said, he's still good. He's still 15 goals a year, but I think his best days are done. Like, I don't think he has the burst. And what I'm saying now is I put my hand up to say I was completely wrong. And I'm super happy to be wrong about that. But like, that's what I've said before. Like, I want to be wrong about Winks. I want to be wrong about Sanchez and those kind of players. Like, and like Sissoko to a degree, proved me wrong as well. Like he's, again, I think he's now sort of on like, that downward trajectory of his career where his minutes are going to get less and less. He still has a role, but he was massive for us, in seasons past, right? So again, like guys can turn it around, but like you look at a guy like Sissoko and like you called it because you got to meet the guy, like he has a great attitude. Like he is a hardworking dude who has a limited skill set to a degree, great athlete, but he played a role. And, hoping that, other players can do that as well. Like, can they reach the ceilings that they were supposed to reach? But, just kind of now wrapping up the show here, looking ahead to Sunday against, Man United, obviously Mourinho is going to want to win that match. He hasn't beaten them yet. I think we've drawn once and then lost, because some bullshit penalty calls. And clearly that's not off the table anytime soon, with the penalty calls. But I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but like, who are some of your starters? Like based on the fact of who played today, who didn't play today, like what are you expecting to see in the starting 11?
Yeah, I think I actually kind of thought about this a lot, so it's not necessarily even on the spot, but obviously Hugo starts. That's the most obvious thing I can ever say. I think Reguilon starts at left back. I think the center back pairing is Toby and Dyer. I think right back is Aurier actually, which kind of surprises me a little bit, but maybe not as much actually, as it would have 2 days ago. The midfield is definitely going to be PEH, Tanguy, and probably Gio. Mourinho did make some kind of cryptic comments about Gio today post-match. We also know that he's just a master manipulator and says things to protect his players. So I still think Gio will start, but I think it's PEH, Gio, and Tanguy, which a lot of people have been calling for a long time. Up front is where it gets tricky for me because, Kane obviously starts. Bergwijn and Lucas both played 90 today. So obviously Lamela is starting, like no question about it. Then it becomes Lamela, Kane, and who up top. There's been, my buddy Dakota, good shout here, maybe Dele tucked behind those two and like a diamond in the midfield, which a diamond in the midfield against United has actually benefited us historically in the past couple of seasons. So potentially I'm gonna drop a real hot take here, and people are gonna think I'm dumb, but it's fine. I love my free hits, right? I think Sissoko might start on the wing, opposite Lamela, and I say that because in Jose's early days, we saw Sissoko play on the wing and scored a couple goals doing it. So if he's not required in the midfield, if we don't have Sonny, if we don't have Bergie and Lucas fit, which we strictly don't, I wouldn't be surprised. So it comes down to Dele for me. If he's confident in Dele starting, then it's Dele, Kane, Lamela up top in some fashion, probably a 1-2 or whatever. But if he's not confident in Dele, then I think it's Kane, Lamela, and Sissoko up top. So we'll see.
Yeah, I actually don't think that's overly extreme. And another reason for that is, you look at a guy like Marcus Rashford, who's going to make sure Marcus Rashford's not running wild. Like it's not certain, he's been better, but like Sissoko is one of the few players that can keep up with him. And like, again, not to pivot too much back to Ali, but like Ali kind of used to be that guy that like could just track you all over the pitch because I saw somebody tweeting about it earlier. Like back in the day, like he would run circles around everybody in the team. And that included guys like Kyle Walker who were lightning, right? And like, I don't have the stats to back it up. That's why we're missing Bennett today, but I'd be really curious to know those kind of metrics. Like how many, and again, in the time that he's running, like how many miles is he running in a game? How many sprints is he making? Like those intangibles that when the goals aren't coming, you can still look to see, okay, you're still doing the right things. You're still tracking back. You're still making tackles, even if, the dribbles aren't successful or stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't think there's anything you said here that's out of line at all. Like I think Doherty played today so that, Serge plays on Sunday. I don't know about Alderweireld since he's now played 3 straight night. Did he play against Newcastle? I think
it was Toby and it was Dyer and Sanchez against Newcastle, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, because I know that Toby played for sure today. He played for sure against Chelsea.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, how many minutes does he have in his legs? I think
Good point. It might be Sanchez and Dyer, actually.
Yeah, it wouldn't be because again, Sanchez did play the full 90 day, but he's also young, right? Like he also has the minutes in his legs. That makes me a little nervous, but yeah, and depending on Lo Celso, I could see Winks playing if Lo Celso is not fit. I don't love it.
Yeah.
It's not impossible either.
Yeah, Winks didn't play against Chelsea, did he? At all. He wasn't even in
he
the
didn't
squad.
play at all. No, he didn't.
Yeah, so that's a good shout too. He went 90 today, which makes me think he might not play, but he actually probably could go again in 3 days. So yeah, that's a good shout too. If Gio's not available, it'll probably be Winks in a midfield three with PEH and Tanguy, which still makes me think it might be Lamela, Sissoko, and Kane up top. And your shout about Sissoko and Mark and Rashford, good shout, man. He's a competitor. He's fast as hell, strong, probably the most fit player on our team as far as his engine goes. I don't think the dude ever gets tired. So, and we all know our manager is well known to put out a tactical masterclass against a heavy opponent. That's the weirdest thing right now is just we now have a manager who adjusts his tactical approach every single match, where Poch was like, same 11, same mentality. We're going to press the shit out of you. And we're going to take the game to you and make you react to us, where Mourinho's like, you guys can do whatever you want. I'm going to react to what you're doing and punish you when you make mistakes, So it's a whole different ballgame for us as Spurs fans, and I think we're still getting used to that.
I think so. Well, again, because he is a tactician for sure, right? That's something that Pochettino got confronted for, is that he wasn't making good subs. He wouldn't make bold decisions. But very last thing, transfer window, very close now to being shut, if I'm not mistaken, October the 5th, so 4 days from now. So by all intents and purposes, Spurs have signed a backup striker, Carlos Vinicius. I think you, like me, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on a guy coming from the Portuguese league. I did see a good thread on him today, which was interesting. It said that, in terms of what he offers, back to goal, decent. Apparently, he's much faster than Kane. This isn't realistically to push Kane in terms of, you're not realistically bringing in the guy that's going to really push Kane, but he is faster than Kane. He certainly isn't the marksman that Kane does. He doesn't have the passing, but apparently he's even played center back and central mid. So it's not. But again, like he's potentially a guy that can press from the front with that kind of. And somebody that's going to get stuck in. He's a big dude as well. So Mourinho loves that. And from what we understand, he was, the main contact, or the main guy that you wanted Spurs to sign. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, but that's about basically the exhaust of my knowledge on him. Yeah,
I mean, I with you do my damnedest to make sure I don't act like I know a player that I don't.
You're not Ryan or Moore. You're not going to pretend you know.
Speaking of which, before I get into Vicinius, we have been way too professional and normal on this show today. Fuck Ryan. Fuck Mort. Bennett's pretty cool, actually. I like Bennett, but yeah, those guys are idiots. Now back to Vicinius or whatever his name is. I also have seen this thread I think you're referring to, and then just a bunch of compilations over the past days. He looks like he has rapid pace, extremely strong. Looks like what I like more than anything is I'm seeing him finish off of through balls like very efficiently in all these compilations. And I think when you have Gio, Tanguy, Kane, Bale, Sonny, like you're going to have a lot of opportunities to play somebody through like that. And so whether or not he's playing alongside Kane or giving Kane a rest, I think we're going to actually be able to use like almost a different approach to our build-up play as to what we would with Kane. And that's going to be very effective in the sense that teams aren't going to be able to necessarily prepare for us as well when we have a striker that is a lot different than Kane, right? Because Kane's fast actually, but he gets very much involved in the build-up, where this guy looks like he's totally the spear, not going to be involved in the build-up. He's strictly an end product. So again, we'll be able to kind of flip what we're doing and not let teams necessarily prepare as well for us. And I think that's the biggest piece of this signing. So
yeah, and I think like what was missing in the first half, especially against Chelsea, is there was no focal point. You had guys on the wings or even deeper in the middle, trying to get things done, but there was nothing in the middle, right? There wasn't that player. And again, you look at Werner's goal, for example, that he scored against us at the top of the box. He took the ball very quickly, turned, and fired into the corner, right? Like that's what we were missing. And obviously Kane's great at that, but like we needed, if it's not Kane, it has to be somebody. And it's really nobody else on the team. It's not Ali. He scores different types of goal. It's not Son, he's, further out wide, and Son can obviously the speed guy, but like we needed that guy who could, fire, get a shot off from his feet, like outside of his feet and then get the shot off. And that was missing. So Like, I think it's a somewhat exciting thing. Like, we'll know soon enough, and hopefully there's some development that'll happen there. The last one, there's still the deal for Skriniar from AC Milan is stalled, or Inter Milan, sorry, is stalled. So again, I'm still hoping that that deal crosses the line, because again, like, it's been a great window, but it'd be a really, really great window if we could add one more seasoned center back.
Totally. I think it's clear that we only have 3 center backs right now, and I don't think we'll last an entire season in 4 competitions with the 3-man center back rotation. So we need a 4th guy. Could be Juan Foyth, could be Tanganga. Doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like Foyth is out on loan to Villarreal, or however you pronounce it. I'm not Spanish, right? Tanganga, I don't know. I think Tanganga needs to be freed up to be more of a utility guy. I also think, like, dude's phenomenal and is going to have a bright career, but we have to pump the brakes a little bit and be careful with how we integrate him, because this, right? I'm just talking, but if you overuse somebody in that situation, they will find themselves in positions where they don't perform well, where it diminishes their confidence, as opposed to using them very sparingly in specific tactical situations, setting them up for success, and then letting the confidence build from there. So I'd rather him play like every 4th or 5th game at the right moment, just to make sure his trajectory is handled correctly. And that's something Mourinho is very good at. So I think we need to get Skriniar in. There's these other links to like Rudiger and things like that from Chelsea. I mean, at this point, we need a 4th center back, and if it comes down to somebody with Premier League experience, I'm not going to complain about that. But this Skriniar guy seems exciting. I think my only question is, again, another person that I've watched play like with one eye open, just when we've been in situations up against him or when it was relevant to me. So again, I don't know anything about the dude, but from what I'm reading, he's very good at pressing in a high line and winning the ball back higher up the field. So part of me thinks is this, if that's what he's well known for, what is
who is this?
Yeah, Skriniar.
Oh, Skriniar. Sorry, I thought you were talking about somebody else. I'm like, you gonna say the name? Okay, yes, Skriniar.
No. Sorry. From what I've seen, again, I've never really watched Skriniar play other than with one eye open for a match, right? But everyone says he's very good at winning the ball back higher up the pitch and pressing with a high line. Not as great with the ball in his feet either. So I don't know. I think obviously I'm not Jose Mourinho. So if Mourinho wants the guy, then I want the guy too. But I don't know enough about him to take any to drop any significant takes on him. But seems like he's highly rated, and if they're quoting 60 million, he's got to be pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of wraps us up for us. Obviously covered a lot in a short period of time. A lot of really good insights. We mostly cut the dead weight from the show today. So I think
losers
going forward, basically, getting some smart people on here, I think is so. For Scott, I'm Andrew. Guys, covered a lot today. You got the big match against Sunday. I'm sure we'll get the time to do the pod after that during the international break. And Bale's coming back. We haven't even talked about that, and we're not going
to. Right?
That is, I hate cherries, but that is the cherry on top. So for Scott, guys who couldn't make the time to be here, like Mort, Ryan, Bennett, I don't know what those guys are doing, nothing important, but I'm Andrew. This is the Chickenball Pod. Please hit the subscribe button. You won't regret it. You might, but probably not.
Hey, I agree, man. If you want to watch a shit show, subscribe, and you'll see one once a week. But other than that, I would just say, come on, you Spurs, as always.
So. Come on, you Spurs.